Look, I got a testimony. I gotta tell him what God did. I'm calling God the homie. He took me out of the mosh pit. I will contest the phony. Separate demons and God's kids. I gotta spread his word, so I'ma show you who the God is. The word is my weapon. I move like a general.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Walk With Me. I'm your host, JJ. Thank you for joining the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you feel like it's giving you any type of nuggets or anything, feel free to share it with someone else. This thing should not be hidden. I know sometimes you want to hide something if you find out it's a brand new thing that you don't know about, if you never heard before, and you want to be able to impress people. But this Bible study is about, walking with the Lord, not with walking with JJ, even though the podcast says walk with me. The me means Jesus saying to you and I to walk with him. So that being said, we got to get ahead of our sponsors here. We got to take care of that housekeeping right out of the way. Exquisite Creations had a big expo that was a huge success last week over at the local college, and a lot of cups were bought, and the name was out there, man. The website had to be revamped. I can't wait to just be able to give that website to you guys, so because no words on here can ever express how good the products are. And you guys are well aware the other sponsor of the show, True Bars the Lyricist. They're doing the beats for the show, the intro, the outro, and the beats for the show. Just always want to get right into this because everything is so good, but just got to make sure I handle business first. Okay. So if you're following us here, we were talking about Isaac being sacrificed. One thing I wanted to say before we moved on, notice how Sarah was very compliant. The Bible did not say that Sarah offered much of a fuss. Now, it could be Sarah didn't know what was going on, but Sarah didn't say much after Abraham got back, because I'm very sure Isaac told her. So that's just something that's going out of the book of JJ now. I was just wondering why it didn't. It's not recorded that Sarah made much of a fuss. She had faith. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe God told her it was going to happen. So you never know these things, but simply not recorded. Now, moving on, Isaac was who the nations were supposed to come through. Okay? So, with Isaac, we had two sons. We had Jacob and Esau. And right off the bat, God set a demarcation, a delineation between the two. Why? Because just like Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau were going to be very different. And when God talks about a nation being made, the Hebrew word for nation is uyeh. No, I'm not pronouncing it right. I know I'm not butchering that. So, you Hebrew scholars, I'm sorry, I just butchered that word like a piece of rib. But that word uyeh, which is referred to as a community, or is loosely translated to, people who think alike. So a nation does not mean, this place with this border. And it's very important to understand why this is the case. A nation does not mean these are the coordinates for this country and these are the coordinates for that country. A nation is not a border in God's eye. Now, some of you may take it to mean whatever you think you want to mean, but a nation is about someone being who thinks alike, a group of people who think alike. Remember, God already separated people this way at the Tower of Babel. He separated people by language at that point. Now he's going to separate people by their thought processes. Okay, so now we're still in Genesis chapter 25 though, so we're moving quite along. We're in Genesis chapter 25. 5, verse 23. And the Lord said unto her, he's talking to Rebekah now, Isaac's wife, said unto her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from your bowels. So, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So from the outset, nothing was better or worse between the two. It was just a promise that God had made. The elder is going to serve the younger. And Esau, being the eldest son, was the hunter, and Jacob was the man of the plains who dwelt in tents. That in itself doesn't say Jacob was not a man's man and Esau was a man's man. That's not what happened. See, the problem with that we're going to see during this episode of this podcast is that God saw what was going to happen, and God saw what happens when you place emphasis or importance on the wrong thing. And this is a theme that's continually present in the Bible. You placing your emphasis and your thoughts and your faith on the wrong thing, you end up getting short. As we used to say in the 80s, you just short. That means you pretty much come up short-handed, come up on the short end of the stick. So right off the bat, the Bible goes into Esau, or preparing Esau up to sell his birthright. Remember now, the elder has to serve the younger. God didn't tell Esau to do this. Esau did that on his own, and God knew that Esau was going to do it. So, as hunting goes, and if you've ever been hunting, and even with today's technology, hunting is not an easy thing to do. Right? Because animals do not like having arrows shot through their heart, right? Contrary to popular belief. They just don't like it. And it hurt. And then they die. Animals do not like to die because they like to reproduce. You can't reproduce when you're dead. I know. It sounds kind of weird. It sounds sort of simplistic, but it's true. Animals will run from you and hide from you and find interesting ways to get you not to kill them. So hunting is very hard. So Esau went out there. Esau was not prepared. Esau thought he was going to go out for a quick deer and come right back. He wasn't prepared. He had taken food with him. He didn't take enough food with him, and he stayed too long. There's a hidden lesson in it. Always a hidden lesson. Esau also was more interested in physical things for the moment. The thrill of the hunt. Being presented as a man's man, rather than, as a man of logic and common sense, which you really need as a hunter anyway. So, and on the other hand, Jacob had a appreciation for spiritual things. Now, what's the difference between having an appreciation for physical things and one for spiritual things? The physical things will pass away. They are guaranteed to pass away. You will not be 22 forever. You will not be 33. You will not be in the prime of your life forever. Likewise, if you're a kid listening to this podcast, you will not be a kid forever. I know it seems like it. Been a kid all your life, but those days will pass. Spiritual things do not pass. Spiritual things do not get old. Spiritual things don't go away. So Jacob had his mind right when it came to what he should be focused on. And God knew this was going to happen. God knew this was going to happen. Because God lives outside of time. God will say things to us and we don't understand because God already understands. You and I are looking at this retrospectively from the past. But imagine living in that moment and not quite understanding, but just going by faith. We talked about last week where, logic and faith do not have to be enemies. Matter of fact, they should be very good friends if you're walking with God. So now, because of the position that Esau put himself into, going out hunting, not being prepared, relying just on his physical brawn and strength, because of this, he found himself in a very precarious situation. And he found himself in a place where, if he was hungry. I believe the Bible says something about not having eaten for 3 days. Something to that effect. So it was here that the two began to separate themselves. Now the birthright was a privilege given only to the oldest son. That was just how it was. They gave him preferred treatment in family, and inheritance, and money, and I believe there's somebody who wrote a famous person who wrote a book called Spare. The second-born son was generally the one kind of left out, and that was the one who had to go and make his own way, because the oldest son generally took whatever the inheritance that the father left, whatever that was. So here's where things began to get a little suspenseful, because Esau was very hungry. He had been out hunting, and I guess the hunt didn't go so well, and he figured he was going to go out and eat his kill and come back and not bring very much. He was going to eat the first of the kill and not bring very much back. Maybe Esau had a pattern of this. You never know. The Bible doesn't say. What the Bible does say is that Esau was hungry and he came back, and the first person he saw was Jacob. And Esau said to Jacob, now we're in Genesis chapter 25, verse 30 to 34. Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with some of that red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom, for faint, weak. And Jacob said, sell me this day your birthright. Just straight out. He didn't beat around the bush. He didn't come with anything. He said, sell me your birthright. And Esau said, look, I'm at the point to die. What shall this birthright profit do to me? The profit is birthright due to me. So that right there, if Esau had been more spiritually minded, he would have been like, I'm not selling you that. That's mine. That's God-given right. But no, he's in his mind, and again, this is logic, so let's not knock Esau all the way upside the head. In Esau's mind, he said, well, if I die, I don't get the birthright anyway. You see how that almost makes sense? So if I die, I don't get the birthright anyway, so you might as well have it, because I'm going to die. Because I'm faint and I'm hungry. I'm starving to death. Esau wasn't starving to death. He might have been faint. But if he came back and didn't take that pottage from Jacob, I guarantee you somebody on Isaac's farm or group or Rebecca would have fed him if he had held his birthright. Sometimes you and I, we have to hold on to things, even if it seems like they don't matter much. We have to pick what we value more over ourselves and stick to that thing. Birthright was bigger than Esau. The birthright was bigger than Jacob. But the mere fact that it can be sold to feed flesh, that's going to die anyway. I mean, think about that. Esau was going to die anyway. Maybe not that day, maybe not the next day, maybe not the next month. But eventually, Esau died. And what does the birthright do for him? Nothing, because the birthright is already given. But instead, he sold that birthright to Jacob. And then Jacob says, well, the birthright is mine now. You sold it to me. It's a deal. It's, when I studied contract law, it was one of the most boring things ever. You have the consideration, you have the payment. In other words, you have the job that's done and you have the payment. And those are the very rudimentary contracts. And this is what you have here. The consideration is the birthright and the payment is the pottage. Now you tell me what pottage is. I didn't actually look that up, but to me it was like, in my mind it was like grits. That's just how I look at it. It could be something else. And some of you guys maybe comment down below if you tell me what that word pottage means. Some of you guys may know. To me, it was like something that was irrelevant. Maybe it was grits. Maybe it was a bowl of cornflakes. Maybe whatever. Whatever it was a one meal. And he sold generations worth of wealth for one meal. Please let that sink in. He sold generations worth of wealth. The wealth passed from Abraham to Isaac. That was supposed to go to Jacob. Remember now, Abraham was no slouch. Abraham had hills and mountains and men and cattle, and that passed to Isaac. Isaac was supposed to pass that to Esau. Esau sold all of that. He could have went out in the field and shot a sheep and ate it. He went out like a sucker. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but he sold all of that for a pot of pottage. One meal of pottage, whatever that is. Doesn't even matter, because what he was trading for that meal, the meal was not worth it. You and I have to be sure that what we're about to trade for our salvation there's nothing worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth getting that other person in bed. It's not worth going out to the club that one time. It's not worth, getting drunk was one time. It's not worth letting a problem overwhelm you. It's not worth it. It's not worth losing your temper. It's not worth it. But Jacob insisted Esau sell his birthright for the pottage, and Esau, not realizing the value of what his birthright was, sold it for a meal of pottage. So verse 34, then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils. Okay, so it's a pottage of lentils. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's what it is. Beans. He sold an entire... That makes it even worse. He sold his entire birthright for the cheapest thing you can buy and eat. When people are on hard times, they eat lentils. Because you can stretch lentils. You can sop it up with bread, and I still have this sort of thing I do today where it just kind of reminds me about how being broke and being homeless, you take the bread and you sop it up in the juice of the beans, and that's like a whole different meal. You sold your entire birthright for a bowl of beans, Esau. And likewise to Christians, you sold your entire birthright for 30 minutes in bed with somebody else's wife. You sold your entire birthright for 30 minutes in the bed with somebody's husband, or 2 hours or 3 hours. It doesn't matter. You lost all of that based on a temporary physical thing. To verse 34. And Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. And Esau despised his birthright. Esau didn't even try to get his birthright back. Now, it could be somebody like me would probably say, Jacob, I was just playing, man. I'm not selling you the birthright, bro. I'll give you a whole deer when I come back. But I wasn't trying to sell the birthright, right? Esau gave it not another thought. He rose up, went his way. It had no value to him. Not then. Oh, but it's going to matter something in a minute. In 2 Corinthians 4 and 18, this kind of explains what the value of the birthright was. While we look at things that are not, which are seen, let me start over. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, things which are not seen are eternal. In other words, let's stop looking at the things that's right in front of us and think more spiritually minded, more eternally minded. And you will realize cussing that person out is not worth it. Losing your temper is not worth it. drinking for that because of that situation is not worth it. Stealing that candy bar from the store just ain't worth it. It's not worth it. And once you come to that, you will no longer despise your birthright. You will understand exactly what your spirituality and your spirit is worth. Now, and I had a note here talking about feeding my belly is more important than feeding my soul. Skipping church ain't worth it. And I know. Church is more than just, going to sit in a building. But there's a reason why that's important. It's the reason why God instituted that. Remember, a nation is about people who think alike, not necessarily where they are. I'll move right along because I can get wrapped up in that for another 20 minutes. And I only got about 4 or 5 minutes left, so let's keep moving. Now Isaac, too, relied on his own senses. He relied on his physicality because Isaac was almost blind. And rather than wait on God to tell him who he was blessing, he just started blessing people. Sometimes we may not see the consequences of our actions, but we press forward and errors result. And we basically change history because we jumped the gun. Abraham had just done that. Abraham changed history because he jumped the gun. Isaac did the exact same thing. He didn't wait, he just jumped the gun. Genesis 27, 21, 22. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really excited about this. Okay, and then we're going to wrap this up for today. And Isaac said unto Jacob, come near, I pray you, that I may feel you, my son, and tell you whether or not you be my son Esau or not. Now, he didn't say who, Esau or who. He said Esau or not, because Esau was the only thing that was important. The physical was the only thing that was important. And Jacob went near to Isaac, his father, and he felt him and said, what is this, Jacob? But the hands of those of Esau, relying on the physicality. What Isaac should have done, and this is out of the book of JJ, of course, what Isaac should have done was say, wait a minute, something ain't right. Go get Jacob. And let's have them both here at the same time. But he didn't. He just went right on and blessed it. They threw the blessing out there, and Esau caught it. But guess what? This was all the will of God, because God was going to prove a point to you. God's going to prove a point to me. And all of this ended up having Esau wanting to kill Jacob. But Jacob's mother told him to flee. Now, this is going to end up setting up another very serious milestone in our biblical development. And this doesn't seem like it's a lot. This doesn't seem like it's a momentous occasion. It wasn't like the Red Sea parted. It wasn't like the flood happened. It wasn't like, a meteor fell from the sky. It wasn't like the first person breathed. It was something relatively minor that will have long-reaching consequences. Please understand, if you've learned nothing else so far from this, and as I learned by studying this, even just doing the prep, you relearn stuff over and over. Decisions have very long-lasting consequences. You don't just make a mistake today. Now, and these things just, you just say, oh, you know what? I messed up. Now, I'm saying this because we know how we think. I'm not saying for you or anyone out there to just sit there and be very fearful of your decisions. Because by being fearful of your decisions, you're not employing faith. But faith has a place, and logic has a place in your faith, right? We talked about this for a couple weeks. Logic has a place in your faith. Your faith in God, God is going to tell you exactly what to do, but you have to be willing to do it. Just like Lot. Lot had almost zero faith. He's sitting in the middle of Sodom and Gomorrah, but he knew when God spoke to him, and God told him to get out. He got up and he got out. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't ask who he could take with him. He just left, and just in the nick of time. So, it's having faith is not doesn't. How do I say this without sounding trivial? Having faith and dealing with spirituality is not like a something that only a pastor or a shaman or whatever religious title you want to throw on that. That's not the extent of faith. Anybody can use faith. Anybody can use these thought processes, and we should apply these thought processes on a consistent basis. We should apply this on a consistent basis because God is telling us how to think. God is telling us, focus on the spiritual, don't focus on the physical. If you focus on the spiritual, the physical will work out. Your body will die eventually. You know, in the meantime, if you're sick, focus on the spiritual, and the healing will come. Don't focus on the cancer. Don't focus on the migraines. Don't focus on, the fact you just stubbed your toe. You don't have to lose the victory because of these things. You don't have to. You can choose to. I would urge you not to, but focus on spirituality. And I'll have to throw out a disclaimer. I am not saying don't go to the doctor. No. It's not what I'm saying. You didn't hear JJ say that? I'm not saying don't go to the doctor. What I'm saying is go to the doctor. Find out what's going on. God will heal you. If it's God's will to heal you. But still, go to the doctor. Go through the process. Go through the treatments. Go through all of that. But your faith is not in the doctor. Your faith is not in the treatment. Your faith is not in the prognosis. Your faith is in God. I can't say it any plainer than that. Your faith is in God. Do not sell your birthright for a cheap physical thrill, for a physical healing. Don't go down here to. They used to have these palm readers over there. Don't go over there and say, I want to know when I'm going to die. That's selling your birthright. Don't do it. That's going to do it, folks. That's going to do it. I'm out of time. Listen, I love y'all so much for listening. I'm really humble. Thank you so much. I thank you for, allowing me into your devices. I would say into your home. That's like back in the 60s, let's say that. When TV was the only way of getting stuff. But thank you so much for listening. God bless you. I'll see y'all in the next one.
Yeah. True. See, I do it for Jesus. Everything I've been do, give me a reason. I got to spread a little words of a genius. Everybody need to know who the leader. See, I do it for Jesus. Everything I've been do, give me a reason.